Hidden in the Heartland.
Hello, this is Kels Goodman, and this is our new Hidden in the Heartland podcast. Over the coming weeks and months, my friend Mark Burris and I will be starting up some discussions about the Heartland research. And we're also open to guests in the future. Our ultimate goal is to start up another season of Hidden in the Heartland. You know, you can watch all of the previous Heartland material on this YouTube channel for free. If you like what you see, please subscribe. We also invite you to help us financially by donating to our Give, Send, Go campaign, which is specifically for producing Season 3. And you can do that on the link below. Thank you, and we hope you enjoy this podcast. Well, today here on Hidden in the Heartland, I wanted to continue the discussion that we started last week on the Hillcumorah, and really fun, spirited discussion that we had. And first off, before we dive into it, I've got several notes here, so I'm hoping that I don't get lost. But I first wanted to, every episode I wanted to present a piece of resource for you, because the important thing about doing this research is that it's up to you to look at everything, to look up everything. Because don't just trust when somebody says, hey, they say when ... because we don't know who and we don't know what they said and whether it's true. And you don't always take everything from a meme on Facebook or some kind of quote somebody gave that's not true. It's funny to scroll Facebook and constantly see, images of Snoop Dogg holding the Book of Mormon and everybody thinking that, hey, look, Snoop Dogg's joined the church or whatever. And you just have to be really careful of what you see, because you can practically create anything these days. So one of the ones that actually Mark brought up last week. And so I thought it would be.
And if you've seen the Midnight Mormons, that's a book that they talk about.
That's right. This is
the only book that they talked about is Antiquities of New York. So
yeah, this was probably the best part of what they had taught. Midnight Mormons had went into when they went into get my words right today. The best part of what they talked about when they discussed the Heartland model, and that was the Antiquities of New York. Now, E.G. Squire was an early studier, surveyor, archaeologist. I don't know his exact title, but he worked with the Smithsonian. And before, one of the first publications of the Smithsonian was known as the, I don't know the exact title, the Mississippi Valley Artifacts or Antiquities of the Mississippi Valley.
The Ancient Monuments of the Mississippi Valley.
That's it, Ancient Monuments. That's right, Ancient Monuments of the Mississippi Valley, which New York and all the way down to Mississippi and Louisiana and everywhere. And then that was the first one. This is, I think, the second or third publication from the Smithsonian, because there was so much just in New York that they gave it its own book called Antiquities of New York, written by
that one is illustrated, right? It's got some cool
there's a few illustrations. Yeah, there's definitely a lot like the previous book. This one also has some, not a lot, but there's definitely some drawings of fortifications and places where they know that man built it and they found it, and so they surveyed it. This is obviously before they could take pictures of it, and they drew it.
I think Squire was even from Palmyra.
Is that right?
So,
I have no idea.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised. So, but the honest truth is, the Stevens and Catherwood book about Central and South America that converted, I think, a few people in the 1800s to thinking that's where the Book of Mormon happened, is similar to this, where they also went down and they drew images of what they saw in Central and South America. So there's a lot of similarities of the time frame, but the information here definitely shows you that New York was full of things that happened anciently. And we're going to talk about one of those in particular today. And it has to do with a certain county called Putnam County. So keep that in mind. We'll talk about Putnam County. We're going to talk about Putnam County now. 3 years ago, when COVID started, we were debating doing season 3 of Hidden in the Heartland. We had the ability to do it, and then March came around and the world shut down. So one of the places we needed to go to in an effort to do season 3 was to go to New York. And that was also one of the worst places to try to go, because if you even entered New York state line, you would have been quarantined for 2 weeks. Is that right, Mark? Is that what you experienced?
Yep. Yeah, they shut everything down, so
yeah, no
you
fun.
Probably wouldn't have been able to find a place to stay. So
yeah, we couldn't even go across state line and use the bathroom. So that would be awful. But yeah, so New York is where we would have spent a lot of time, and that's what I'm going to do today is talk about something that I felt like we could have done an episode on. Okay, so first off, we talked about the chambers last week. The chamber, I should say, the room or cave or whatever we want to call it, the second hole or orifice, so to speak, that supposedly existed in the Hillcumorah. We showed you a photograph of how one hole could have been there that somebody had found, and from a friend of ours who had a boy that fell in the hole, and they had to send some jumper cables down there and get him pulled out. And when they looked in it, they took a picture and they noticed that the walls were made with some kind of stone holding it up. So obviously some man went in there, or men went in and constructed this hole. It was and also constructed it anciently. And so that's sort of the image, is these sort of rock-like figures on the side that kept this hole open so that people could go in and out. And there's a lot of talk in church history of when Joseph would go and return the plates, that he brought in other brethren with him, and they testified through a secondhand testimonials that they actually walked into the Hillcumorah. And so you can review the previous episode of this podcast, and you can hear more about it. I'm not going to dive deep into it right now, but you can check that out to review it. So thus we know that, or we feel like we are discovering that the Hillcumorah has some artificial structure to it, that obviously that is starting to become some kind of news, I guess you could say. Now the Hillcumorah is part of what they call a drumlin. Now a drumlin is actually a hill that's shaped kind of oblong shaped. And it's mostly that way because it's kind of left over from a flood. It's like, for example, if you had, let's say, a cookie sheet or something, and let's say you put you filled it full of, let's say, wheat, not wheat. How about flour? There you go. So let's say you stick flour on a cookie sheet, and then you just pat it down, and you pat it down, and you pat it down, and then you take the water from your sink, and you start to run water, and you take the sheet, lean it on its side, and you run water on that sheet, and just wait for that flour to come off your sheet. Okay. Hopefully I'm creating good visual theater here. And you'll see that you'll see little pockets before all of that flour comes off that sheet. You're going to see like little strips of what looks like watered down flour, and you're going to see little bumps before it all completely goes off. And that's, imagine that at, looking at it from, several miles in the sky, looking down at New York. And that's what a lot of New York looks like. It has a lot of these bumps that were created by ice sheets, or a flood of some type, or some kind of water running that eventually created these hills that have this kind of long used shape. Hopefully that's good visual theater.
And if you don't know like what a drumlin looks like, you can go into Google Earth and actually type in Hillcumorah, and you'll see the hills in the area. One of the debates out there is that a drumlins don't have caves, so therefore there cannot be a cave in the Hillcumorah. And I guess we're trying to clear that up by saying, well, it more than likely would be a man-made structure.
That's right. So that's exactly right. So now you know what a drumlin is for the most part, or you can go Google it, and you know that Hillcumorah is probably a drumlin, but on top of that, the Hillcumorah also has some man-made level to it. And like they could have taken an existing drumlin and done some work on it, and thus it is the Hillcumorah as it is today. So definitely something cool. Now, what I want to go into is now I'm going to take you to Putnam County. And Putnam County is a county that is east of, it's probably the far east side of the state of New York. And it's north of New York City, and it's east of Palmyra and Rochester and all of that. So if you pull out a map, you can see kind of the area where Putnam County is. And this was one of the areas we were going to go when we were going to visit 3 years ago. Now, I wanted to share with you, before we go to Putnam County, I want to read for you from the scriptures. We're going to read from Ether chapter 9, and down in verse 3, it says, "And the Lord warned Omer in a dream that he should depart out of the land, wherever this land is. Wherefore Omer departed out of that land with his family, and traveled many days, and came over and passed by the hill Shem, and came over by the place where the Nephites were destroyed," okay, which we know is Cumorah. And we know that Shem and Cumorah, or what they would call Ramah is also known as Cumorah. Shem is not far from Cumorah. How far it is, we don't know. There's one theory today that it was about a mile away, and there's another hill that I know that they've been messing with to see if that could have been Shem, but not much has been done. Have you heard that? Have you heard that discussion about this other hill that's nearby?
Yeah. So like letter 7 from.
Oh yeah, Oliver Cowdery's letter 7.
Oliver Cowdery's letter 7. It talks about the Hillcumorah. There's the Hillcumorah. There's a valley, and then there's Hill Shem. Supposedly Hill Shem is south of the Smith farm, in that area. I'm not sure. I don't know a whole lot about Shem.
Yeah, I don't either. And I
imagine if it was a place of record, the Nephites would have taken a lot of care to dismantle it completely, and not leave a whole lot left for the Lamanites, because the Lamanites were set to destroy record. And I think they probably did a good job of that whole dismantling.
Yeah.
And one thing, you mentioned Cumorah Ramah. A lot of people don't know this, but the Hillcumorah, Willard Bean put a flag on the Hillcumorah that said Ramah Cumorah when the church first bought it, and it was on the hill for like 30 years.
Oh yeah.
And all the brethren were like, yeah, definitely. That's Rama Cumorah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So let me continue reading this. It says, and from that, and I'm in the middle of verse 3 in chapter 9, and it says, where the Nephites were destroyed, and from thence eastward. Okay, so Omer and his family split because he received this revelation that there is destruction coming to wherever they are, wherever the kingdom is, and they're moving eastward. Okay. And he says, thence eastward, and then came to a place called Ablom, wherever Ablom is, and it's by the seashore. So we know that wherever they left to, they ended up in a seashore. And it says, and there pitched his tent, and also his sons and his daughters and all his household, save it were Jared and his family. Okay, and so they go, and then Achish comes and does his damage. And later it says, I want to hop forward to verse 9. It says, and it came to pass that Nimrod gathered together a small number of men and fled out of that land, or the land, and came over and dwelt with Omer. So more people came, and they came east, and they went and hung out with Omer wherever Ablom is and wherever this seashore is. Okay, and then it says in verse 12, and there began to be a war between the sons of Achish and Achish, which lasted for the space of many years. So we know when they went to Ablom, this whole war that they were hiding from lasted many years. So they spent a bit of time. However many is, we don't know. But we know if you're going to be somewhere for many years, you're going to make yourself a home. You're going to build yourself a small kingdom. I doubt you would live in a tent for many years. You would probably eventually build something. So who knows? That's reasoning, throwing reasoning into that. Continuing in the middle of verse 12, it says, yea, unto the destruction of nearly all the people of the kingdom, yea, even all, save it were 30 souls, which is a pretty big. And they also who fled over with the house of Omer. Wherefore Omer was restored again to the land of his inheritance. And so eventually Omer came back to Cumorah. Or past Cumorah, went through Cumorah and went to wherever this kingdom was. So here is a little piece of possibility. Once you know where Cumorah is, then you can backtrack from Cumorah. So if we say east of Cumorah, where is that? And the only thing we can think of is there's a couple of options of what's east of there. And one of them is obviously New York City. It's kind of southeast. I know that there's kind of a natural, drive to go to, when you're getting on the highway. Of course, they're not on a highway. So, but there's a way to get to the sea by going through New York. And then there's also the other state that you go through, or the other county, I should say, northwards. You would actually go right through Putnam County to get to that sea. Okay. So that's why I brought that up, is that Putnam County would be kind of in the area where this Ablom could be. Okay. Not totally connected. Now, why Putnam County? Why did I bring up Putnam County? The reason why is Putnam County is home to a bunch of mysterious stone chambers. And so I pulled out a couple of articles that I found because I actually learned this from going to the Ancient Artifact Preservation Society conference. Okay, so this is one of those where they would physically go out to these places and survey them. And so somebody came and gave an awesome discussion about Putnam County. And so I went and found several articles. I'm holding it up for those who can't see me. There's a New York Times article that says Putnam's Mysterious Chambers of Stone. It was early morning of March 20th, the spring equinox, and the sun was just creeping over the horizon. Its rays darted through the doorway and down the length of the long, narrow chamber into the back wall. The sunlight illuminated the interior as it does once a year. Archaeoastronomy, the alignment of structures with the heavens, is usually associated with such ancient wonders as Machu Picchu in Peru and New Grange Chamber in Ireland. Okay, so you know that a lot of chambers, a lot of structures, such as Serpent's Mound in Ohio, and then also Stonehenge, all have a certain connection between the sun, what the sun does, what the moon does, and the time of year and where it sits. And so that's a study called archaeoastronomy, and we do feature that in one of our episodes of Hidden in the Heartland. And
if
so
you've ever seen America on Earth, Scott Walter talks about it an awful lot. Like he finds ritual baths and things like that that line up, at certain times of the year. They line up with the sun. So yeah, it's something that they really look into. It also shows that it was an ancient civilization rather than just a farmer. Farmers aren't like, well, I'm going to store my grain in this and I need to make sure the sun hits here on a certain day.
That's right.
We're just, as a modern society, we're not as concerned about that.
Yeah.
Probably the only equivalent would be we want Angel Moroni to face the right way on our temples, and that's about it. So.
Yeah, that's right. So we facing east, with the sun coming up. So what's interesting is, just to introduce these chambers to those of you who've never heard of this, there's about 100 of them that are in Putnam County. And what's fascinating is that they're mysterious and nobody knows where they came from. And I'm just going to read on. It says, Mr. Breck, the Hudson Valley coordinator for the New England Antiquities Research Association. I didn't read all of it. New England Antiquities Research Association is convinced that the stone structures are likely, like this one, were built by ancient European explorers, possibly Celts, who sailed to the New World centuries before Columbus. Celt critics dismiss these theories as based more on imagination than evidence, which is what you always get when it comes to talking about anything ancient and American or United States, ancient United States. There's always that, well, that's just your imagination. That's just, always crazy. And I totally get when you're doing anything with archaeology is not an exact science. Okay. It's not, it really is not. And you have to be open-minded. You have to be ready to be wrong. You have to be okay with, okay, maybe it's not what I thought because new evidence has arrived. You have to be ready for that, but you can't just cancel it and then quit and then just go, well, that was then, and it's because this guy told me so. And so, because this guy told me so, I'm going to stop. We have to realize that it's always ongoing, and you have to always be open-minded. But, you can go into the alien route and the Bigfoot route, and that's a whole nother discussion, which we won't start, but, but you can just focus on, what do you see in front of you? What do you see? And so he says, locals have long considered these structures the handiwork of 18th century farmers who say they built them up to store meat, dairy products, and vegetables on the farms that have since gone back to the forest. But Mr. Breck says it's preposterous that it could be farmers, or because that some farmer would or could haul multi-ton slabs of granite just to make a shed, which is really an interesting quote. He says, you don't need to go to these lengths for a person to store food. He says, you'd only do something like this for religious purposes. And later, other discussions, I can't find it immediately, but they were saying that where these chambers are, you can't, there's no farms nearby. So why would you haul all this food to this chamber that's there when there is no evidence of farming near the chambers. You would put if you build these chambers, you would build them near where the farming is. But if the farming is not nearby, then that's not what the chamber necessarily was meant for. At least we could guess.
Yeah. It's funny too, because a lot of these sites there won't even be roads. Like there's not even any, they're like, oh, well, there was a farm there. Well, show me the foundation of the farmhouse. Like, let's show something that backs up what you're saying, because I'm more than happy to believe what you're telling me, but you're just saying, oh, well, it was a farmer built this. Or one of my favorite ones was it was like a hut for a witch or something like that. Like, we have to write it off as something else, but we're not going to add any supporting to what they're not going to add us supporting evidence to what they believe. They just want to take the easy way and say, well, it couldn't be that, it has to be something else. But
especially when they look at it from modern eyes, that's like saying, oh no, they would have ordered everything on Amazon, or whatever. They don't, I'm being facetious, but they see it from a modern eyes of the way people do things. That's part of why we hardly, I jokingly tell my wife, I say, because she loves doing this research too. My wife loves this research. And I told her, I said, what eternity is, the thrill of what eternity will be, or what the 1,000 years of peace would be. It's going to be research. That's what it's going to be. You're going to be able to go anywhere on the earth and go, this is where this happened. Isn't that amazing? And you'll get the 100% truth of that. And other than all these half-truths that we know, because we just don't have all the evidence. We just don't know. And we don't know what these Putnam County chambers are. And we don't necessarily have an answer, nor am I saying that Omer and his family went and built these chambers. I'm just saying it's in that neighborhood. It's right there. There's elements there. It's in that neighborhood. Who knows who could have built these? But here's what's amazing about these chambers. These chambers are built similar to this whole cave room that's in the Hillcumorah. They have some similar structures to it. Not exact, because I haven't been able to visit them. So I hope to be able to visit them and come back with more information. But I might even throw some pictures here if you're visual of some of these stone chambers, or you can look them up online and you can find, but always put Putnam County stone chambers, and then you should be able to easily find. And there's, like I said, there's 100 of them. In fact, one of the ones we were scheduled to go look at was like across the street from a Walmart, and it was just on a hill over there. And that's the other thing that I'm noticing in the article is that nobody is claiming them. There's not even a Native American group is claiming them. And that's
and Native American groups are typically pretty anxious to claim whatever they can. I mean, even if it's in the vicinity of where their lands are, they'll say, "Oh yeah, that's ours."
Yeah, that's true. That happens. Yeah. And this is one of those moments where they literally they can't claim them.
It must be Bigfoot. Like, it's got to be.
It must have been Bigfoot and his family. That's right. Yeah. So with the aliens, and here's one. It says, to most people, this is a quote from one of the locals. It says, to most people, they're just part of the landscape. Marilyn, I can't pronounce her last name, director of the Carmel Library, said, quote, for a lot of kids, they're just a place out in the woods to smoke and drink. One chamber stands several feet from the whizzing traffic on Route 6 in Mahopac, diagonally across from the Kmart and the Grand Union. Inside are leaves and trash and a faint smell of urine. On the walls, there are indecipherable inscriptions, not in ancient Ogham, but in black spray paint. So anyway, so it's kind of basically what they're noting is that because they're not being preserved, people are just going and just destroying. And so and they're starting to get more and more destroyed as, housing is expanding and people are, buying up these properties, and they'll have one of these chambers on their property, and they're like, well, this doesn't do me anything, and they don't know who it belongs to, and they just destroy them. So it's one of those
if no one cares about it, no one claims about it, it's like it doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that's right.
And who knows what who knows how many of them were there.
Yeah.
If the whole county was filled with them or whatever, and that might be what's left over, but after thousands of years. But no one cares about them because there's nothing in North America.
Yeah, exactly. No, nothing before Columbus. Exactly. And then a bunch of dumb savages. But yeah, well, and when you look at these chambers, just to describe them so people understand, a lot of the chambers are an existing hill that's dug out, and in the hill they go in and they take like slate or some kind of rock, and they built around it to hold the hole open, is basically what it is. And it's usually dips into the ground halfway, and the holes are all facing, I can't necessarily say that they're all facing east. I don't have that information, but it does show that they're all open, and there's a brick all around it, and then you can walk in it and you can hang out. And so, and I guess according to this, you can smoke doobies and spray paint the walls. So it's free game, I guess. But I just think that this was kind of a fascinating piece. And so we were wanting to go over there. We may go over there maybe later this year and see if we can't take some pictures and do some filming and go to Putnam County. But you got to find them. So
do they know the earliest record of it is like the 1700s that they're
people? So far there's not a lot. There is some records of, in fact, there is some records of people using them, but not as they're the ones that built
it.
Yeah. So it's just sort of something interesting. Now, for those of you who are watching, if you have information on this, by all means, if there's something we're missing, again, I'm not saying it's one or the other. I'm just saying that it's fascinating and it's worth looking into. If you have information, by all means, leave it on the comments below, and we'll have a nice, friendly discussion. Don't be mean, be loving, and we'll be loving back. So,
didn't the article mention something that had to do with the electromagnetic, that some of those sites, like you could take a compass in and it would spin around?
Oh yeah,
something like that.
That's right.
Like that would indicate that they were, if it's more of an ancient structure, it actually changes a little bit of the magnetic field because it's been there for so long.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't understand the article the way that it was written, but I thought that was kind of interesting.
There's actually two articles. There's a second one, and maybe it's in this other one. This one is called, this one's from the Highlands Current. I think that's what it's called. Highlands Current. Mystery Shrouds Putnam's Stone Chambers. And I've got that one printed and marked up a little bit. And I wasn't really looking into that one. I don't know if that's the one I sent you, Mark, but yeah, that one, because I think the New York Times, now you have to have a subscription. And so when I printed this, I don't think you totally had to have a subscription, but yeah, it's definitely, like I said, it's definitely a fascinating, look into these chambers. So if you guys have any information on these chambers, let us know, and we'll definitely present it in a future episode, because I'm sure this discussion is going to continue.